You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, December 15th. The 49ers are heading out to Arizona to take on the Arizona Cardinals for Week 15 with a chance to clinch the NFC West. Joining me to talk about this matchup, as we always do on a Friday, is Laurie Fitzpatrick. How you doing today, Laurie?
Oh, I'm doing so good. A lot better than last week. So,
yeah, glad to hear it. And yeah, I know your Jags are doing pretty well still. So, glad to hear good. But all right.
Yeah, I
At
mean,
least, hey, there was a bit of a
they've been
scare there
losing though.
with.
So,
there was a bit of a scare there with. Oh my
Trevor
God, what's his
Lawrence.
name? With Lawrence. So I'm glad he's okay at least. And they're still very
Yeah.
much in the race.
I mean, like Trevor said he said this week, like if they were in the same situation last year, then as they were last year, they would be blessed. Last year they were, they weren't in a good place and they had to kind of go on a run at the end of the season. So they kind of have to do the same thing. They're like actually in a good spot, even though they've had a couple losses in the last few weeks. So it's just about thinking positive. That's all you got to do at this point.
Exactly. Sometimes you just got to speak into existence. So, I know for the 49ers, we're kind of hoping that, this week goes well for them. Let's look at the weather really quick because this game is going to be played in Arizona. As of right now, there's like about 60+% 49er fans projected to be in the building for that game. So they're going to be able to enjoy that nice Arizona weather, 75 degrees. So not going to be a factor in this game. Now, what could be a factor in this game, however, are all of the injuries for the 49ers.
Yeah.
And you can see here on the left the amount of injuries and the players who are going to be out. Tight end Ross Dwelly, Eric Armstead missing another week. And this time, Javon Hargrave, their other starting defensive tackle, also going to be out. He's tending to a hamstring injury, as well as backup running back Elijah Mitchell dealing with a knee injury, and backup linebacker Oren Burks. Now, on the questionable side, they have Spencer Burford and Aaron Banks. Both of those guys seem to be on the good side of questionable. And earlier in the week, Steve Wilkes did say that Dre Greenlaw was going to play for this game. He's questionable, but pretty sure he's going to be he's going to be available for this one. And Charvarius Ward, he's also questionable with the groin injury. Remember, he missed most of last week's game with that. But he's been practicing, at least working on the side, and he looks to be moving well. So I think he's going to give it a go. John Lynch kind of sounded optimistic talking about Charvarius Ward earlier today on KMBR. So I would imagine Ward would be out there. That's a good boost for the defense. And on the Cardinals side, there really aren't much notable ones. I mean, I would expect both of their wide receivers, Marquise Brown and Michael Wilson, to be available. And from there, like, they seem pretty healthy. They're coming off a bye week. So, I'd expect, they are going to be healthy in this game. The injuries for the 49ers, though, could, play an impact on their defense.
I think that we're just going to learn a lot about this team, about the 49ers defense in particular, this game, because, this is, I don't want to have to say it, but it's kind of a trap game, right? What 49ers have, 5 wins against some of the best teams in the NFL, and now they're going up against, what was it, like a 3-win team? And they beat them last time, was it 35-16, and it was against Josh Dobbs, but now you're going against Kyler, and you don't have your 2 starting inside tackles, and now Burks is out, but who I'm really excited to see? D. Winters. Now,
Really?
he was a part of one of the best defenses at TCU. You remember, like, they somehow got into, like,
nice.
Yeah, like, that was, TCU had one of the best defenses, and D Winters, man, he had a couple sacks, like he had forced fumbles, he had interceptions, he had passed his defense. Like, this guy can do everything. So I'm really excited to see what he's able to do this week. So I'm gonna be watching out for him.
Yeah, I mean, I do expect Greenlaw to play, but if there's any moment where, him or Fred, God forbid, miss any snaps, gonna have to go in there,
No,
because
Burks
Burks
is out.
Burks is out, yeah. So he could get some extra snaps in this
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Steve Wilkes, does have a lot of confidence in D Winters, as he expressed earlier this week. And he has some confidence in the backup defensive tackles as well. Um, he said, quote, "I'm very confident in their performance and how they're going to play, but across the board we've all got to step up." And that's for sure true, because it's not just on the defensive line that they're going to be dealing with injuries. Of course, that's where I think that's where we're most worried about, the defensive line injuries. But,
yeah,
there's other guys who are going to need to step up as well for the 49ers. And we'll talk more about that in a bit here. But you mentioned it, Lori, like, looking at both of these teams, like, they couldn't be more like polar opposites of each other. You look at the records: 49ers 10-3, Cardinals 3-10. You look at what we're looking at here on the screen is like their EPA. And you look, there's a bunch of green for the 49ers, and there's a bunch of red and orange for the Cardinals. They're not as great as far as the EPA goes. And so, what I do want to make sure that we acknowledge, though, is the fact that this is a pretty different team than the one the 49ers played back in week 4. And the 49ers, is, as you also mentioned, won that game 35-16. Brock Purdy was 20 of 21, only one incompletion, 283 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. And Christian McCaffrey had 4 total touchdowns, 177 yards from scrimmage. Brandon Ayuk had 148 yards receiving. So, man, like, it was kind of an explosion of offense for the 49ers, and I would kind of expect a similar thing in this game. But at the same time, a lot of has changed for both of these teams. If you look at the Cardinals, especially, like, on defense, they were without, back in week 4, they were without their safety Buda Baker, their defensive lineman Jonathan Ledbetter, and their linebacker Josh Woods. All 3 of those guys going to be playing this time around.
yeah. I mean, they're definitely a different team. Is even on the offensive side of the ball too. Like I said, Kyler Murray. So we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens. But I'm not really worried about that Cardinals defense, because boy are they bad. They're horrible, and they're just tanking. They get rid of Isaiah Simmons. Like, they're ready to lose. So, but this is the games you got to worry about. Teams that are just ready to kind of give up and fall on their back. So,
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Shanahan mentioned how, like, this team kind of reminds him of his first year 49ers team. And they won some games late in the season. They had a terrible, year, but things were starting to come together at the end there. And so I kind of feel like the Cardinals experiencing some of that, of course, with Kyler Murray coming back in the mix these last few weeks. That has kind of given them a boost. So instead of Joshua Dobbs, which the 49ers faced back in week 4, they got Kyler Murray, and he'll be starting for Arizona. Trey McBride, their rookie tight end, has since week 4 taken on an expanded role, which at least partially contributed to Zach Ertz asking for his release. And so McBride's been a huge part of their offense these last few weeks. Cardinals are 2-2 since Murray has returned as a starter, with their 2
that's what
wins
I was gonna say.
Exactly. And their 2 wins are against the Steelers and Falcons. It counts for something.
Garbage teams.
And
no.
But well, we're just talking, like, they're garbage teams too. And like we were saying, like, this could be a trap game for the 49ers. The Cardinals are coming off their bye week. They're probably feeling a lot fresher than the 49ers do right now, because the 49ers dealing with a lot of injuries, right?
Yeah, that's why I think this is a game by heart. This is going to tell us a lot about the depth of the 49ers defense. I mean, the one thing though that I'm not really worried about is the defensive tackles. Okay, yeah, they're out, but I think Kyler Murray is I think he's like 15th in this is quarterbacks rushing up the middle. Like he does not like to go up the middle. So just as long as your defensive ends stay home and they try not to crash in too much, and they kind of keep that wide base. I don't really think he's going to be running too much up the middle, but I say that and watch it happen. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that does, I guess, like help me feel a little bit better. And so, like, I do want to take this moment to segue into my first cautious matchup of the day, right? Because it is Kyler Murray going up against this 49ers depleted defensive line. In 4 games since he's been back, he's thrown for 864 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and among 42 qualifying quarterbacks, he ranks 29th in yards per attempt, and 32nd in highly accurate throw rate. But he's also run for 106 yards, and he's averaging 26 and a half rushing yards per game. And he has 3 rushing touchdowns in 4 games. So obviously, for me, the bigger concern is containing Kyler Murray, the runner, which is, definitely easier said than done, especially with the injuries that the 49ers are dealing with right now. So that's kind of my concern with Kyler. I mean, obviously, like the defensive line has a big involvement in stopping any team's run game. Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave have been a huge part of that, like when they've been in there. And so the 49ers are going to need big games from Javon Kinlaw. And Kinlaw's been great like these last 2 weeks. He's probably gonna have to play some more snaps. So hopefully he could hold up for the whole game. Kevin Givens and who, he's had some extra snaps these last 2 weeks too. And they're probably also going to bring in some guys, rotational guys, rookie Kalia Davis. They'll call up T.Y. McGill from the practice squad. I think they're going to need all hands on deck for this one. And I do feel good that Drake Greenlaw is going to be available for this game. Him and, Fred Warner, of course. Jair Brown could have a huge role in stopping anything that maybe gets past the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For some reason, like the Cardinals, they have like a kind of like a sneaky good offense. They have Rondell Moore, they have Marquise Brown,
Yeah.
Trey McBride. But the number one guy that we want to worry about is James Conner. And I don't want to like step over your toes. I don't know where you're going next, but James Conner is definitely a guy to worry about. When you look at average yards per attempt, think he's at 4.7, and I think the 49ers give up something similar. Their APA, just like Rohan in the chat, he brought up the Niners EPA rush allowed and Cardinals EPA rush. That's a I don't know the numbers, but like I said, I'm pretty sure 4.7 is what Connor rushes, and I think the Niners allow something very similar. So that's definitely going to be the most worrisome matchup for sure, without a doubt. So
yeah, when you talk about the Cardinals run game, it isn't just Kyler, of course. Like James Conner's mixed in with that as well. And he's averaging I think I saw it on PFF 4.9 yards per carry just week 13 against the Steelers before their bye week. He had 105 yards rushing. Week 4 against the 49ers, he had 11 carries for 52 yards. So it wasn't so much for like lack of efficiency that day. It was more so like they just stopped trying to run the ball after a certain point. But like I said, with the 49ers defensive line dealing with the key injuries, he's a cautious matchup for me this week as well. And the one good thing I will say that you don't have to worry about Connor is like he's not really involved in the passing game at all. So it's not like he's like that dual threat kind of guy. And actually, since week 10, the 49ers have the 4th lowest missed tackles per attempt, like per rushing attempts, and the 2nd highest stuff rate, and have given up the 2nd fewest rushing yards per game. So we'll see how that holds up this week against Connor, and talking about some of the injuries that they have, if they'll still be able to stop the opposing offense's run game.
Yeah, and now that I'm looking at Sports Info Solutions, and The 49ers are giving up 3.9, so it's not close to 4.7. I think I heard that on a podcast that I listened to today, and that's why you don't listen to any other podcasts except this one, because we don't give false info. So, just saying. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, no,
not
the
4.7.
49ers run the 49ers run defense has been solid. Like
Yeah, it
any other
hasn't been
game I
bad
would
at all.
not I really would not worry about it. It's just the fact that they're dealing with the injuries. Like I have to and last week it was just Eric Armstead and that was something they can handle because Javon Kinlaw had a good game. That's just one guy on the defensive line. Javon Hargrave also being out, like, oh, okay, like things are starting to pile up a little bit, and so now I'm a little more concerned for sure, as I think a lot of people are too, as they're commenting here in the live chat. So yeah, I'm concerned about it. The one plus is that the Cardinals run blocking composite rating ranks 29th in the league. I will say though, their offensive lineman or their best offensive lineman is probably Will Hernandez. I think he's their right guard. He has a 94% pass block win rate that ranks 17th among interior linemen, and he's also second among interior linemen in run block win rate, which I thought was interesting. And so that's a guy to keep an eye on for that Cardinals offensive line. If they start like moving the ball and moving the 49ers defensive line, it might be because Will Hernandez is having a good game.
Yeah, definitely watch out for him. But I don't know. I think they'll be all right. But that is probably the only thing that I don't want to say even worried about, but that's the one clash in if we're
Yeah,
looking at the teams.
for sure. I think for me too, like this is really the only thing. And Steve Wilkes was asked about, stopping Kyler Murray and what it takes. And he said, quote, "Number one, we've got to be sound in our defensive responsibilities as far as the zone read, not allowing him to be able to get outside the pocket because he's definitely going to pull it. And then also his ability to be able to scramble and go make a big play. I think it's a little different than Jalen Hurts, but it's still the same premise that we've got to make sure that we contain him." I'm glad he mentioned that it is different than Jalen Hurts, even though these are two quarterbacks who are known for like escaping the pocket for different reasons. They do play differently, like stylistically. So yeah, it's a different but the same but different. Uh, so I'm glad that he mentioned that. And Oasis Rip says how we handle Kyler will give us an idea how we'll deal with Lamar. I mean, it's not bad practice that the 49ers in these last few weeks have had to deal with Hurts, Murray, and next week it's going to be Lamar. So this is pretty good practice for them, if anything. So we'll see how that goes with Kyler this week and James Conner. I was prepared to downgrade George Kittle as a cautious matchup against the Cardinals, believe it or not, because I think in week 4 he had just like one catch for like I think 7 yards. And so the reason that I decided not to have him as a cautious matchup though is because if you look at their linebacker Josh Woods, he has a 36.1 PFF grade, which, PFF isn't the Bible or anything, but if they grade you that poorly, like you probably are pretty bad. So 36.1 grade, and he ranks 80th out of 80 linebackers. So you best believe Kyle Shanahan has
Damn.
him under a microscope this week
Holy
and
crap.
is dialing up some stuff. So George Kittle, could have some success here, but I honestly think other guys could have even more success than George Kittle.
Yeah,
And
McCaffrey.
that's yeah, to me, that's the difference in this game for the 49ers. Their offense. I mean, yeah, Christian McCaffrey, let's start with him, right? Like for one, like the 49ers run to the left side 60% of the time. So look out for that in this game as well. They have a lot of success with it. Of course, it helps when you have Trent Williams. Arizona is 28th in run stop win rate. They're 30th on the season in rushing yards allowed per game with 139 yards. Their last 3 games alone, they've averaged 156 yards allowed on the ground. So, all that to say, they might have a hard time stopping one of the best in the league in Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. I mean, and he went off in that first game, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. He had
Yeah.
4 total touchdowns in that game. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. So, like, okay, 4 touchdowns and, 100 and something yards from scrimmage. Even if the Cardinals say, and I'm sure they will, they probably watch back that film preparing for this week, and they're like, we have to stop McCaffrey. Like, we have to do a better job of stopping McCaffrey. Even if they sell out to stop Christian McCaffrey, okay, fine. Like, someone else is just gonna have a good game. Like,
I mean, so you're just leaving the rest of the D. Like, you're gonna bring up 6 guys to stop him, and that leaves one-on-ones. So, do it. Do it, because that's one of the best matchups. Honestly, is Purdy versus this Cardinals pass defense.
Yeah, for sure. And I love Brock Purdy in this game. The Cardinals are 25th in pass rush win rate, so maybe he'll have a little more time this week, top rate in the pocket. The Arizona secondary since week 9 has allowed the 10th most 10th highest yards per attempt, the 5th most passing touchdowns, and the 6th highest passer rating. And Purdy was nearly perfect the last time these two teams played. He only had the one incompletion, right? That has been a theme for the Cardinals this year. They're allowing the highest completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks of any team this season, nearly 70% completion percentage in their coverage. So I'm thinking Brock Purdy is gonna have a good game. This is also a homecoming game for him, so I'm sure he'll have a lot of family in the crowd, a lot of friends, and he's starting to catch wind of this whole game manager discussion. Like, he's starting to get asked about it, and he seems visibly agitated by the questions and just by, I guess, the discussion at all. He decided to not comment on it. So maybe his comment will be on the field with his play.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, it's getting kind of ridiculous at this point, because any quarterback who is number 1 in the league in completion percentage of 20-yard passes or more shouldn't really be considered as that game manager, because the game manager is more of those short high percentage passes that kind of open up between the zones of the defense. But if you're able to sit back in the pocket, you're able to move around and maneuver and kind of wait for those holes to open deep, then that's not really a game manager. And when you look at the Arizona defense and allowing on 15 plus air yard plays, they give up the 8th most yards. They have the 2nd worst EPA. It's a plus 66. I didn't even think that was possible. A plus 66, which is ridiculous. And they give up the most yards per attempt on 15-yard plays or more. So they give up 17 yards for every single time you attempt a 15-yard play or more. That's a lot. So I don't know. Those two stats kind of clash in terms of Purdy doing well and this Cardinals defense, pass defense, defending deep is not looking good for them.
Yeah, and I guess that takes me to the 49ers wide receivers, right? Because I think they're going to have a big game based on everything you said and some of the things I saw too. I'm not really sure what to think of Debo in this game, although PFF certainly likes the matchup for both him and Brandon Ayuk this week. They say the 49ers have the highest matchup advantage of any receiver this week against the Cardinals defenders. This tool is used for fantasy football purposes, so I don't really know how they calculate these numbers or anything. They don't show us that, but it's probably a good sign. And that probably has a lot to do with Keitrell Clark, the rookie, and their other corner, Wilson, who they both have struggled this season. And I do remember Ayuk cooking Clark a time or two in that week 4 game. Debo had a quiet game against the Cardinals in week 4. No targets, just 3 rushing attempts for 6 yards. But over the last 2 weeks, as we know, Debo has been on a tear, 288 yards from scrimmage, 5 touchdowns. And since week 9, Arizona has allowed the second most receiving yards per game to perimeter wide receivers. So there is reason to feel like this time, I think things will be different for Debo. And I expect Ayuk to have another big game.
Yeah, I mean, and if we want to see, what the real like advantage matchup is, let's look up Ronnie Bell because he's probably high up there too. Because everybody's supposed to do well against this team. So, if there is one guy we want to look up, I think we should see more Ronnie Bell. If there's gonna be more of a depth game anyway in terms of the roster depth, then why not just throw him out there? Give him some more reps. Especially if the score gets out of hand, just throw them in there. So why not?
I love that idea. I think a lot of us have kind of been pushing for Ronnie Bell to get more opportunities. He's gotten the opportunities as like on special teams and in the return game, but I mean, he's been nice when he's been out there. So I don't know if there's just some like trust thing with Kyle Shanahan or what, but yes, if the score gets out of hand, I'd love to see him out there. And I mean, Ray McLeod's been hurt, so when you need a third receiver, I know Jawan Jennings has been there. He's been third in Jawan. But I wouldn't mind mixing in some Ronnie Bell too, and just seeing how he's improved as the season has progressed. As far as the Cardinals defense, they run a lot of too high, right? They do a lot of zone and too high. And the 49ers receivers here, this is another reason I think that Ayuk and Debo have a pretty big game. It's crazy because against too high, Debo has a 30.5% target share. So he gets targeted a ton compared to Ayuk, 20.7%. But Ayuk gets the chunk plays. Ayuk has a 38.7% air yard share against too high. And if you look at the first read share, part of the reason that Debo gets so many targets is because 37.3% of the time he's the first read. I don't know how they calculate that. Like, how do they know like who's the first read in every play? But I don't know. Again, fantasy
wherever Purdy looks.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So they gotta like look where his head goes.
Yeah,
another
that's
like
one hell of a like. If that's your job to look which direction every single drop back, oh my god, kill yourself.
That's why I'm like that. I wonder how like accurate that is. But anyway, like yes, yeah. Debo. It seems
some
like
14-year-old kid getting paid $8 an hour to watch which way Purdy's head turns. Crazy.
Yeah, all these like fantasy football tools do come in handy when it when it comes to looking at like little things like this, or just like the way.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Where do you even get this from? Like I said, I'm always surprised where you find these crazy stats.
Dude, I scavenge the internet for all these like stats and stuff. This one, I have so many different like sources where I get all this stuff. I think this one was from, I saved it because I was like, this stuff is good. I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. I think it was like one of the fantasy football like sites. Because this stuff is great. A lot of that stuff is behind a paywall. Like you gotta pay to get like the real detailed analytics, but this stuff comes in handy. So if I can find it and get my hands on it, it's coming to you guys in these preview episodes. So yeah, all that to say, like I think these receivers are gonna have a really big day against this Cardinals defense. And so yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the equalizer in this game. That's where the 49ers are going to be able to pull away, and it's not even going to matter that they're missing guys on the defensive line.
Yeah. I like Keith's sneaky links case. Sneaky link Steph.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to prepare these shows, but hey, giving you guys some good content. Technic Chic says, what if Purdy is looking off a safety or something? Do they count that as a first read? Hey,
I mean, that's Purdy, a good question.
Why are we doing that? Are we doing
that?
Yeah,
I mean, I think it depends on how often he's looking off defenders. How often is he doing that and getting rid of the ball? Um, but generally, he's still going to look in that direction, and he could look there pre-snap too. And then if they're like running a slant, then he moves on to the next guy. And usually, where his feet are can be the first read as well, not just his head, because where you're pointing your toes is where you're going to throw the ball. So you can kind of look that way, but your feet are facing the other way, then you're throwing that way. So unless you're like Patty Mahomes, which he's hard to kind of.
Yeah, I gotta imagine there's some plays where it's kind of like subjective, or it looks kind of
Yeah.
oh, I'm
That's
not
why
sure.
the 14-year-old getting paid $8 an hour is, not the best guy to take stats from all the time. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, so take it with a grain of salt, if you will. Okay, I have one more favorable matchup for the 49ers, and you guys like aren't gonna believe. You're gonna be like, Steph, like, why would you say that? I actually think Trey McBride is a favorable matchup for the 49ers and the 49ers linebackers in this game. Look, I am aware, like, Trey McBride has been awesome. He's, like I said at the top of the show, he's been a huge part of the Cardinals offense. He's already tied the Arizona's franchise record for catches by a tight end in a season with 56. He has 440 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns over the past 6 games. And 49ers, though, are one of, if not the best team in the league in defending tight ends. So that's where my favorable, designation for this one goes. I mean, they're just allowing an average of 4.5 catches, 37 receiving yards a game to tight ends. And they've also just allowed 2 touchdowns to tight ends this season in week 1 against the Steelers and just last week against the Seahawks. And the Seahawks literally had to rip a page from the 49ers playbook to get that touchdown against them in week 14. So, I mean, call me crazy. I think the 49ers could limit McBride's impact. I'm not saying they're going to shut him down. I'm just saying I think they're going to be able to limit him enough that it might make things more difficult for Kyler Murray and them. What do you think?
Well, yeah, but that's 100% why James Conner has to be like a factor. They have to use him because, yeah, like you said, the 49ers are like second or third best against tight ends. They allow like a 75 passer rating, which is like ridiculously low. Like, because tight ends are usually like the quarterback's right hand man and not getting the ball a ton. So when they do get it, they're catching like 2 out of 3 passes, 6 out of 7, because they're usually quick, so only allowing 75, it's, I don't know. That's why James Conner he's going to be that guy this game. And obviously, if the 49ers can stop him, then, it might get out of hand early.
Yeah, and that's what I think will happen. Like, just enough that the Cardinals will have a hard time and Kyler will have a hard time if he's not available, because I think that's one of his outlets. I didn't even talk about the 49ers corners. I think they can handle these Arizona receivers. I know in week 4, they had some good plays. Michael Wilson, I think, had a touchdown, right? But they've improved a lot since week 4. The 49ers secondary has. And especially if Mooney Ward plays, I feel good about them handling the Cardinals receivers. I guess like we said, the only cautious matchup of the game is the Cardinals run game, right? And they got to be able to stop that, because if they can't stop that, that's going to be a domino effect of other things that could go wrong and unravel for the 49ers defense. So that, as it always is, should be their main focus. Easier said than done. You're going to need big games, like I said, from Kinlaw, from Givens, T.Y. McGill. Those guys are going to need to.
D. Winters, baby.
D. Winters, Jair Brown. Greenlaw, Fred, like all those guys are going to have
get,
to be on it.
tighten him up.
Yeah, I don't think defense is gonna get a lot of snaps, but if he does, he's got to step up, right?
If he
So
does, think of me. That's
tough
all.
task.
You know.
I will. I'll be like, I'm a tweet. I'm at you on Twitter and be like, hey, you were right about
Yeah.
D Winters.
Watch him do something, man. Watch him do something.
You never
No,
know.
but
Hey,
I think it's interesting how like the tackles are out, and I just looked up the direction that the Cardinals run the most, and they're actually 31st in the NFL when running up the middle. They only have 313 yards up the middle, so it's just like I don't know. I feel like these stats are like going against each other are just too good right now. Like this is like it's kind of scaring me a little bit.
yeah, so I mean that bodes well for the 49ers that even if they're dealing with injuries, like the Cardinals don't really run up the middle. Uh, that would definitely help them in this game. So we'll see. Do you have any score prediction for this one?
Well, man, they've been scoring a lot. The 49ers have been dropping 30 points like every freaking game. It's crazy. So yeah, I'm gonna go with another 30. I'm gonna say like 38 to 18. You 17, 17.
Oh,
18 is too weird
dude,
of a number.
that is so close to mine. You said 38-17. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
Chris says 37-17. So we're all kind of on the same wavelength here. I'm saying 38-19 because I think we're all kind of on the same page. Like I think the Cardinals, they're desperate, I think with the injuries that the 49ers have on defense, they'll get a score too, but at the end of the day, the 49ers are going to be able to score so many more
Oasis.
points. It's not gonna matter.
38 to
Oasis
35.
38 to 35 in a shootout. That's
Oh my god.
crazy. Against the
That would be
Cardinals?
insane.
Against the Cardinals,
That
I
would be
would
insane. Kyler
I'd
Murray
set
comes
myself on
back.
fire.
This is the game where he watches film for the first time in 2 years.
Right.
Watch it.
Just this game. Yeah,
Just this game. That's it.
42-17. 40-17. I think we're kind of like, oh
71 to
man, Keith,
11.
you crazy. Keith says 71-11. You crazy. Bro Montana says 31-20. So we're kind of we're thinking that the Cardinals might be able to get some points, but the 49ers will just have so many more. So yeah, and the Cardinals are averaging 18 points per game in their last 3 games, as with Kyler at quarterback. So I think 17, 18, 19, like that's a reasonable prediction, I think, for the Cardinals. And 38, of course, I think is reasonable for the 49ers offense against that Cardinals defense.
I'm gonna say that the 49ers get like 5 sacks this game because James just brought up a really good point. Murray has a 33% passer rating when he's under pressure. That's crazy. And even though the D tackles are out, you still have Chase Young and Nick Bosa. Like, come on. So I mean, yeah, Hargrave and Armstead are obviously bullies up the middle. But this is all if Kinlaw and Givens can I'm not saying they're not gonna it's not gonna be a difference, but I think if they want to prove themselves, like I said, this is a game of heart this week. They really got to show them. They really got to push through, and I think if they can kind of make it so they don't skip a beat, then I think Nick is gonna go off because Murray's not gonna be able to run the ball up the middle. Okay, he's not gonna be able to go that far. So I think it's gonna be a ton of sacks. If they get 1 or 2, then they're gonna really pile them on. So I think that would be awesome.
I mean, I like that. I do like that. I was actually surprised how many sacks they were able to get against Jalen Hurts. Again, Kyler's a little different because he's so quick. He's so freaking fast.
Yeah, his change of direction is a lot different than Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, so I think it will be tougher, but like you said, like I could see it snowballing a little bit if they can stop, Connor, if they can stop McBride. Crazier things have happened. So let's see if we see it in this game. But guys, like this was a fun show. Thank you so much for joining me on a Friday. Just gotta say, I'm starting to feel a little under the weather. Like, I don't know if you've got me like coughing over here. My throat's hella dry. So I want to do a live post game after the game on Sunday, but all depends how I'm feeling. So just I'll let you guys know how I feel, but you'll know if I don't have one scheduled, it's because I'm not feeling great. So I'm gonna go and eat some dinner. Enjoy the rest of my Friday. You guys do the same. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. But for now, have a good rest of your Friday, folks. Peace.